The ingenuity of medieval Islamic chemists is impressive. But I wanted to know something deeper. What contribution did they make to our modern understanding of the principles behind chemistry? This is the centerpiece of modern chemistry, the periodic table. It lists all the known elements. Its key idea is to group substances with similar properties together. On the far right, for instance, are the inert gases. On the far left are the volatile metals. The periodic table is a triumph of classification, giving scientists a way of organizing their knowledge of the material world.
Classification is simply a way to think clearly. I mean, what you need when you have some ideas about how the world works is that gives you a kind of schema, and you chop the world up into categories. And that actually helps you to understand, to make sense of what's around you.
People have been trying to classify the material world since ancient times. The Greeks, for instance, thought there were just 4 worldly elements: air, earth, fire, and water. But this idea was a philosophical one and had little practical value. And that's what medieval Islamic chemists really changed. They used experimental observations to classify the stuff the world is made of. At the forefront of this was a medieval Islamic doctor and chemist called Ibn Zakaria al-Razi, who was born here in the city of Ray, just outside the Iranian capital Tehran, in 865 AD. Al-Razi's classification was very different from the Greek one. He argued, for instance, that minerals, roughly stuff we dig out of the ground, should be classified into 6 groups, depending on their observed chemical properties. The same guiding principle that lies behind the modern periodic table.
Now, what I've done is I've brought materials from his classification scheme. And we have here what he called the spirits. We have the metallic bodies, we have the stones, then we have the attriments, the salts, and finally the boraxes.
Each of Al-Razi's groups had a profoundly different experimental behavior. For instance, spirits were flammable. The metals were shiny and malleable. Salts dissolved in water. Of course, these classifications are not the way we do it today. But the point is that for the first time, Al-Razi was grouping substances on the basis of experimental observations, not philosophical musings.
We've come over 1,000 years since the work of Al-Razi. What sort of debt does modern chemistry owe to him for his classification?
Well, I think with Razi we start to see the first classification which really leads on to further experiments, the first schema which allows people to start doing rational work. And so really he lies at the start of almost formal chemistry, which ultimately leads to our periodic table.
I believe that what we see in the work of the Islamic chemists and alchemists is the first tentative steps to a new science. Yes, by our standards, it contained a lot of magic and mumbo-jumbo, but it placed an emphasis on experimentation that was truly revolutionary.
But bigger and better was to come, because Islamic mathematics and the experimental techniques of Jabir ibn Hayyan and Al-Razi were about to be welded together in a completely innovative way that would revolutionize their work and create the modern scientific age.